Hi, friends. Maybe. I'm playing with this little rose. I've got these beautiful roses on my desk here, my studio desk, that have been blooming right now out in our garden. Let me get one and I'll share it with you. They're this beautiful yellow color, but what I love about them is they have a lot of this peachy pink in them. And I thought I would play with those today. I'm going to start by, and by the way, I've got, I'm using this little Dugato brush. This is a number 6. I have these listed. There's a whole set. They're very reasonable. And I've been playing with them lately just to see how long they last. I actually like the tip. They're pretty firm and snappy, and I like the feel of them, and we'll see how they go. I've been using them for a couple weeks here. I'm going to start with painting, wetting my petals. So we're going to be working wet and wet. And then today I am using this pad of paper I found in my paper supply. It's Grumbacher. I'm actually quite liking it. It's kind of an interesting size, 8x8. And it's the 140 pound cold press. So I've been playing with that lately too. Sometimes when I start running low on supplies, I just kind of go through what I have and I find some really interesting, fun things. All right. I kind of traced out this picture here, and I'm going to go in and let's see. I think what I want to start, by the way, this is a 6 round brush. Let's just create that yellow color. I'm going to be using the Cad yellow here, kind of wetting that, and I'll use different values of that for this rose to kind of get some of those different colors. And I think I will start, let's see. Let's start in the middle here. Let's actually start with this petal right here, and I think I'm going to go darker under the lip. Now, I intentionally drew this a little bit darker so that you could see it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing it this way because it's probably most likely going to show up in my painting. And that's okay because watercolors are so transparent. I'm going in with a light, somewhat light, that's tea consistency. And I've got my 2 containers of water here. I've got my wash, and then I've got my rinse, and I've got my paper towel here to dab off that I'm using. Okay, let's go ahead and start here. I'm going in and I'm laying down with the tip of my brush. So I'm going quite light, and I'm holding quite a bit towards the top of my brush, applying this paint. Now what I'm going to do is rinse my brush, dab it off, and then I'm going to go in with that push and pulling technique, pulling this paint down, okay, just like that. All right, look at how beautiful that blending is. So I'm softening and I'm feathering out that petal. Then I think what I'll do is maybe just go in and grab a little bit of this yellow ochre, and let's just add a little bit of that. So getting a lighter value. And tapping in now using that wet on wet technique, like that. And then I'm going to, again, pull it down a little. You just want a damp brush. You don't want it too wet. And look at how pretty that is. I might, because this is in the crease, go in with a little bit more of that color, maybe even, sometimes I just use what's on my palette. And tapping in here, yeah, I like that. And going into the center. Now that's a little bit more water than I like, so I just tapped off my brush. Because again, we always want to work from light to dark. And there we go. Look at how pretty that is. That's really got a nice wash to it of dark to light. That's a gradiated wash. Let's go ahead and go into another petal here. And I'm actually going to start with the dark color at the bottom, picking up this cad yellow again, like so. And then feathering into the bottom here, like so. I might leave some white space in the bottom there, so you see I've got that white space in between. Now before this dries too much, I will go in and I will just wash my brush, gently scrape it off, rinse it, do the same thing, and then tap it off because we don't want too much water. And we're going to go in and push and pull here to feather out that edge, like that. Okay, look at how pretty that is. Now notice I left some white in here, okay? We want that. We want that white in there. And then I'm going to move on to another petal. So let's go into this one here. Same thing, going in and I'm grabbing my cad yellow. And I'm just going to lay down some of this paint here, okay? And then I'm going to feather it out. Rinse my brush. Tap it so it's just damp, and then I'm going in and feathering that edge, pulling it like so. All right, look how beautiful that is for a petal. While this is still wet, I think what I will do is pick up some of this color that's already on my palette. Going to say it was a mix of my cad yellow and orange and maybe some of that cad red. And I'm just going to barely tap in here. Wet on wet, just like that. Okay. And then let that sit and kind of spread. I might encourage this a little bit to spread. Like that, okay. And I actually think I might just add a tiny bit more. We can always go darker, so I much rather go light at first. And then I can always go in and darken. Something like that. Okay, there we go. And let's, so the center of my roses, let me take a look, is yellow and some orange. I'm going to grab more of this reddish orange that I already have on my palette. And that's a lot of times why I don't rinse all these colors off my palette, because I like to reuse them. And I'm just going to go in and using the tip of my brush, very light pressure, just go in and create that. Okay, there we go. I might go in with a little bit of maybe this color. That's alizarin crimson. Maybe a little bit of gold. I'm just playing here with some colors. And go in and tap in, something like that. That's a wet and wet, so it's kind of spreading there. And then we're just going to keep working around this flower. Let's go ahead and go in here. I pick up that yellow again. And then I'm going to wash my brush and kind of dab it off and go in and feather this again. Now I want to leave some of these little white spots. Okay, so there we go. I think what would be nice here would be to maybe, well, let's go in here first and just create dabbing in wet on wet. There we go. Let that kind of blend. And I think that's good. I think I'm actually going to leave that just as it is with that lip on there. I might go in and just create a little bit down here. So I'm going to go in and grab that yellow, that cad yellow, which I'm going to have to refill that, and just create a little line down here. Okay. Wash my brush so it's just damp, and then just go along that line and kind of soften it like that. It's very subtle, but can make a big difference. Now I feel like even though the center of my rose, which is kind of hard to see, it's hidden inside there, it has a little bit of that magenta type color, that kind of pinky color. I'm going to just barely add some of that. I think it's really pretty. Something like that. Yeah, I think that's pretty. Okay. And let's see, which one should we do next? How about we do this one here? I think that would be kind of pretty. This leaf back here, I'm going to go ahead and just bring down. Okay. Let's go in, and because this petal is kind of curling over, I feel like this would be somewhat shaded. So I'm going to do a little darker version of that yellow. I pick up my cad yellow, maybe add some of that. And I've got this beautiful light, tea light consistency. And I'm going to draw it down like this. Yeah, I like that. I'm leaving some white space there. Just like that. Yeah. I kind of like that. I feel like that's a little bit of a shadowed area. So that works for me. Okay. And then let's go in, let's see, we can do this leaf right, or yeah, this petal rather, right here. And I'm going to start on the bottom here because I feel like the top of the petal is going to have more light. So let's just go in. There we go. And just creating this here, maybe like that. Rinse my brush, tap it off, and turn my page and just go in and feather again, soften that edge. Like so. Ooh, yeah, look how pretty that is. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. Yeah, that's pretty. Okay, I've left some of this white space in here. And then I'm going to darken this right here. Actually, what we can do, and this is just, you know, I do this very spontaneously. I don't completely plan out every painting that I do. I just don't. So right here, I might get a little bit of yellow on my paintbrush, and I'm actually going to use the tip to tap into that red. I'm okay with that blending a little, like that. Because I notice in the center of my flowers, it's a little bit darker. It shows that depth in there. And then washing, tapping off my brush so it's just damp, and pulling that out, feathering it out. Look how beautiful all the lights and the darks are. I really, really like that a lot. Let's go in here and let's see. I'm going to leave this whitish and color this in a light yellow. And really how I decide that is I'm just playing with the different colors. So this is dark. I don't want to go dark against dark because I want this to look like it's curling over. So let's go in and just create this. Like that. And now I'm going to go in and very lightly wash my brush, dab it off, and I'm going to soften that line. Just like that, okay? And I like this mostly staying white because it looks like that petal is kind of twisting over. Let's move to this one. I'm picking up that yellow again. That tea consistency. Maybe a tiny bit more water there to lighten that value a tiny bit. And then let's go in and create the base. Now I'm just drawing these little lines. Wash my brush and then dab it off so it's just damp and feather it out. Being okay with some of that white space in there. Just like that. See how pretty that is? Now I want to make this look like it's tucked in there. I'm going to grab some of that color I've got here, which I think is alizarin crimson and some cad yellow. I'm going to just tap in here, wet on wet, like that. Now I can go in and just kind of pull that again. I wash my brush, I tap it off so it's not full of water, and I'm just going to blend. Going to encourage that to come out like that. Now I don't like this hard edge line here, so I'm washing my brush, tapping it off, and I'm going to soften that, just like so. All right, there we go. I'm even thinking I might want to, I feel like I want to do something with this. I'm going to let that sit a bit. I'm not sure how I want to handle that. Let's move to this little petal over here. Again, I go in, I grab my yellow, and create these little lines coming out, leaving a lot of white there. Wash my brush, get most of the water off, and then I go in and feather it in. Just like that. Okay? There we go. I like that. Let's go, so I'm just repeating this same process over and over and over again till I get these beautiful whites and lights and darks. For the most part, the darks are in the middle, in the center, because the flowers are tighter. Therefore, there's going to be more darkness. The outer edges are more spread out and in the light. Let's play with this petal here, going into my yellow. So as I said, I'm just repeating this process over and over. Grabbing that yellow, go in, coming from the center out, maybe coming over here, like that. Okay, really making sure, as I'm always talking about, the lines should be pointing here. So as you see here, my lines are going this way. I want to make sure those lines are actually going this way, like that. Okay, they're pointing towards the center of the flower. Wash my brush, dab it off, and now I will feather those edges. Just soften those edges, not getting rid of all that white space. I can certainly go in here now and add some of that deeper color. Let's mix some of that. And go in and just touch in like this. And then let it sit just a second. Washing my brush, and it's damp, and I'm going to go in and just encourage it to mix, making sure any white spaces I have, I'm not covering up. And then soften this line again, just like that. Okay, see how that creates that depth? Okay, this is actually a leaf. Let's play with that a bit. I'm going to go in and use my green, a very, very light shade, light value, which means more water, less paint. And let's go in there, making sure I don't touch this because that's wet. And if I touch it with this wet paint, it's going to all turn into a blob. Point, press, like this. Point, press, like so. Now that's a little bit of a hard edge, so I'm going back in with some water and blending that edge, just like that. Now I might go in while it's wet and pick up some of this darker green, a little darker value so it shows up. And while it's wet, just kind of tapping in. Now this paper, I'm noticing, doesn't stay wet long. What I'll have to do is go in and use that push and pull technique because see, my paper dried. And just going along the edges and wetting it, okay? I'm going to re-wet some of this. So that's one thing I am noticing about this paper is it does dry very quickly. Pick up some of my paint, tap in, kind of following just some interesting little areas of the leaf. Just kind of playing here, like this. There we go. So if your paper is drying really quickly, you know that you can always wet your brush, dampen it, and go back in with a little bit of water, okay? There's actually another leaf right here, but I'm gonna wait because this one's wet. Let's go ahead and play with this leaf in the background. I'm sorry, petal. I'm going to go in with, because it's in the back, I'm going to kind of start out with a darker color, a little bit more of that alizarin crimson. And let's just go in, making sure those lines are in this direction. Okay. Coming out from here. There we go. And I feel like because this is white, this is going to really stand out in the background, which I like. Let's darken that even a little bit more. Like that. Wash my brush. Tap it off so it's just damp. And go in and feather it out. Just repeating that process over and over. Just like that. I feel like that petal can be darker because it's behind all these others. And this here is the lip of this one. So let's just go in and create a little bit of darkness along here. Going into my yellow. Creating that yellow line here. Okay. Washing my brush, damp, and this time just going in and softening that line with just water. There we go. Okay, I think I'll even pick up with a dry brush some of that up there. There, yeah, I like that. I want to create more interest here and show that depth in there. I'm going to go in and use this gold. It's actually yellow ochre. And go in here. Now I have to be careful and not touch this area because it's wet. And just darken that a bit, like that. I could go even darker, but I always like to start lighter because we can always go darker. Just like that. Now, see, I did accidentally touch that. It's okay. Rinse my brush and feather out this edge. Now, you don't want to do this until this is completely dry. Okay, that's really important. So there you go. I kind of like that. I think I might go here and do a little bit more of that. A little bit of that alizarin crimson, that gold. And let's go along here. And we're just going to darken that a bit. Okay. Feather the edge, so the same thing. We just keep doing that. Yeah, I quite like that. That's pretty. Yeah, I like that. Let's go ahead and work on this other leaf here. I pick up a very light value of my sap in olive green I'm always using. I go in and I just put a light layer on my leaf like that. I didn't cover the entire leaf. I left a little bit of white. And then I'm going to go in with that tiny bit of darker value. Let's use a little bit of this. Can pick up some of that because I do want a darker value. I don't want to darken this too much. I kind of like how it's lighter. And see, my paper dried again, which is fine. And I'm just going to go around. Now, before that dries, I'll wash my brush, scrape it gently off, tap it, and again, soften that edge, like so. Yeah, that's pretty. Going to go down that center vein a little bit, maybe like that. There we go. I can pick up some of that if I want with a dry brush. Okay, I like that. Okay, let's do this coming out here. Again, we start in the middle with our cad yellow. There we go. Actually picked up a little bit of that darker color, and I'm going to come out from the base, just like that. Rinse my brush, tap it off, and feather it out, like so. Yeah, like that. I'm going to pick up some of that. There we go. I like that. Now I can always go in here and add a little bit more of that reddish color, maybe even some gold in here. Something like that. Feather it out. go. Yeah, like that. That's pretty. Let's go ahead. This is a leaf over here, so I'm going to color that again with that green, the light value. And I'm not using a lot of water there, so that's, I'm sure, why it's drying so quickly. Just like that. Add a little water. Spread it around. There we go. Soften these edges. Okay. And then I'm going to go in with the darker hue, which I'm kind of running out of here. I'll add a little bit more. To darken the value, you want to add more pigment, like that. And let's just tap in. Like that. There we go. Now I can kind of pull that out a bit. There we go, just kind of playing with that. There we go. I can even darken that if I want. And then just let it sit. Here's another leaf here, picking up a light value again. And going in like this. Other side. There we go. Leaving a lot of white in there, actually. There we go. Okay. There we go. And one more leaf here. Light value. Like that. I'm going to soften these lines. Bring in a little bit darker for that center. Using very light pressure, the tip of my brush. I'm just touching that, okay? Now, I think what I want to do is take this little bit more of this red color we've been using the whole time, alizarin crimson. And I'm going to use a very light tip of my brush and just create some little lines here, okay? If you have a smaller brush, you can certainly use it. Just very, very light pressure. Like that. Just going to dot around the edge There we go. So I like that. Yeah, I think I like that. Now I'm going to, let's just create this little branch here. I'm not sure, I feel I drew in the branch here, but a part of me feels like I want it to come from somewhere else. Let's go ahead and go with that, I suppose. I'm going to use my branches on my stems on my roses have definitely a reddish tint to them. Let's go ahead and start out with our green in a light washy color. And what I'm going to do is add some of that red because all the thorns on mine are this reddish color. There we go. It's alizarin crimson. Now again, this paper seems to dry very quickly. So I'll go ahead and put in these little thorns like so. I'm going to go in while it's wet, so I have to work rather quickly. And now pick up this green gold and see if I can kind of touch in with that. Yeah, that's what I wanted. There we go. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Now I could work my way down and create some more leaves. I really wanted to repeat over and over this push-pull and softening and feathering of these colors so you could see how I do that. So actually, if I was doing a composition, I could, you know, create some buds coming out here, but I rather like this just as it is. I like these white spaces here. I think that's really pretty. It feels like it's turning up towards the light. And I think I'm done here. I could go in and add a couple more leaves here. Maybe we should do that, huh? Let's go into our green. Going to add the green gold, our olive green, and let me pull my rose out here so I can take a look at it. So these petals kind of come out. Going to draw this like this, and then using the side of my brush, it's kind of a round petal like that. And there's one coming out on the other side that's a little bit tipped. Okay. And then there's one big one coming out at the end here. So let's create that. Like so. Again, leaving some of that white space. And just tapping in so I can let that spread. And I think I'm pretty good with that. I feel like I want to add a little bit of yellowish in there. Now this may have dried, so I may have to go in and kind of play with that a bit. Now this is still wet, so that I got that effect I wanted. There we go, I kind of tapped in. Could even add some of that yellow here. Just using the side of my brush. So I'm kind of carrying that around. And do you see how I've talked about adding the color of the flowers into your leaves? Because look how that really lets this still be the focal point, but yet pulls those colors in there. I might add a tiny bit of yellow to this one. A very light wash like this. So I'm using the side of my brush just to give it that hint, like that. Maybe this one. So we're really leading the eye around. And this beautiful washy color. Isn't that pretty? The other thing I want to do is darken this up a bit. Even though my roses aren't much, I'm going to use the burnt umber, burnt sienna, and go in and darken that center a tiny bit by dotting in. Just like that. Yeah, I like that. My roses don't actually have that dark center. They do have that reddish center, but I feel like I want that in there for maybe some interest. Not getting rid of those whites in there at all. Okay, I think we are done. Notice here the whites I left, the light colors, so it gives this feeling of the petals turning, the interest. I could even do a tiny bit more with this, but I think I'm going to just leave it as it is. I've got a little spider crawling on my desk here. And there you go. I hope you enjoyed that. I will put this in my tutorials as always. I'm looking for a pen here. This is my open rose tutorial, so let's put this right here. And the date. There you go. And maybe just my signature there. All right, I will do a little swatch for you, and there you go. All right, everybody, I hope you're doing well, and thanks so much. I will list my supplies in the description, and you know, I like this Grumbacher paper. I think it's a little pricey, and it seemed to dry rather quickly for me, and I like wet and wet. It is a very good quality. It's very kind of stiff and thick and textured. It's a beautiful kind of luxurious paper. All right, have a good day. Thanks for joining me.